Hey yo, hey yo, hey yo. Hey yo, this one today is most definitely an exclusive. Hey yo, this is Hernandez Govan criminal history getting exposed by the no other YouTube detective Byron Blake. Most definitely. You know what I'm saying? Shout outs to Byron Blake because he always come with some crazy shit. But hey yo, this one is out of control. It's out of hand. I need y'all to give me y'all thoughts on what y'all feel, but make sure y'all stay to the end of the video so y'all could understand the whole everything. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey yo, remember, we ain't asking for no money, y'all. Only thing we ask for y'all to do is hit that button. And that's a factor mundo, right? Yo, it's really getting wikito out here in these YouTube streets for real. I keep telling y'all. You know what I'm saying? Like, YouTube City is on fire right now. Most definitely. So if you in YouTube City, remember, watch your back. Hey yo, hit that like because I'm about to take y'all on a hike. And if y'all 10 toes down, hit that notification bell so you can always stick a friend.
This love and make me wanna go back because it came from a time I swear this loving is a throwback because it came from a time machine. All the things you did to make it right.
Today, we are going to look at Hernandez Govan's criminal history. There have been a lot of accusations about him being a federal informant or possibly being a federal informant. And there's also the issue that Justin Johnson, aka Straight Drop, the guy who was actually convicted of killing young Dolph and sentenced to life, there's the issue of his attorney stating that Hernandez Govan took a proffer deal during this case. And that's leading people to come to the conclusion that he was acquitted because he is a federal informant. October 17th of 2003, Hernandez Govan was charged with unlawfully committing the offense of possession of a controlled substance and driving without a license. The officer who completed the affidavit stated that officers were called to a location about drug activity and they encountered the defendant, Hernandez Govan, who was observed in the driver's seat of a 2004 Jeep. This vehicle still had the engine running. The defendant gave officers identification, then proceeded to leave the vicinity of questioning. Officers smelled a fair odor of marijuana on the defendant's person. Officers proceeded to catch up with the defendant, and upon encountering him, for officer safety, they patted him down. Once they patted him down, they discovered a small pouch of drugs containing marijuana. While out on bail from those charges, less than 30 days later, he would be arrested again and charged with possession of a controlled substance with the intention to manufacture, deliver, or sell, bartering, giving away, or obtaining legend drugs. According to the officer who wrote the affidavit, the defendant and his co-defendants were found in front of an address in a 99 Dodge Intrepid. When the arresting officer put the spotlight on the suspect vehicle, he noticed the defendant and co-defendants all started putting unknown items under the seats of the vehicle. The officer advised all defendants to place their hands on the roof of the vehicle. The defendant Walker and Hill complied. Defendant Govan exited the vehicle and fled the scene. Defendant Walker and Hill were detained as the arresting officer looked through the window of the suspect vehicle and observed several assorted prescription drugs on the front passenger floorboard where defendant Walker was sitting. There was a pint-sized bottle of an unknown prescription syrup on the driver's side front floorboard where the defendant Govan was sitting. There was a large clear plastic bag containing 41.9 grams of marijuana on the rear left passenger where defendant Hill was sitting. Defendant Govan was found 2 streets from where he fled. The prescription drugs and marijuana were tagged in property and evidence. And as we see, these are 2 separate instances, 2 separate drug-related charges. And though he would plead out to lesser charges, both of those incidents led to convictions. Now, let's fast forward to 2006. On October 27th of 2006, an officer appeared in front of the court, filing an affidavit charging Hernandez Govan with possession of a controlled substance with intent to manufacture, deliver, or sell, driving with a suspended license, and violation of vehicle registration law. According to the arresting officer, he was doing regular patrol when he observed the defendant in a 2000 Pontiac Grand Prix with no tags traveling westbound. The arresting officer stopped the vehicle, asked the defendant for his driver's license, which he did not have on his person. The arresting officer smelled a strong odor of marijuana coming from the vehicle. The arresting officer patted the defendant down for officer safety and felt a bulge in his right front pocket. The arresting officer placed the defendant under arrest and then retrieved a clear plastic bag with 49 pills, green in color, that tested positive for Lortab and were tagged in the property room at 201 Poplar. The arresting officer checked the defendant through Station B, who advised that his driver's license was suspended. The defendant also had $1,171 that was tagged in the property room. The defendant was transported to 201 Poplar and his vehicle was towed. Just a few months after that, Hernandez Govan would find himself in court again after being arrested and charged with possession of a controlled substance with intent to manufacture, deliver, or sell for possessing hydrocodone. According to the affidavit, detectives received info from a confidential informant that Quick, later found to be Hernandez Govan, was selling hydrocodone at the Circle K at Quince and Kirby. Several recorded calls were made between the CI and Govan. Detectives set up the Circle K and observed the CI to make a hand-to-hand transaction with Govan. Detectives approached Govan and identified themselves. Govan refused detectives' orders and ran eastbound on Quince. Detectives took Govan into custody after a short foot pursuit. Detectives recovered $100 cash and 50 hydrocodone. The hydrocodone were positively identified through the PDR. All evidence was tagged at MPD property room. Govan was later transported to the med and released by a doctor. He was charged with evading arrest as well. Govan would then be arrested again in April of 2012 and charged with convicted felon in possession of a handgun, possession of a controlled substance, to wit hydrocodone, and possession of a controlled substance, to wit marijuana. According to that affidavit, on April 8th, 2012 at 1:15, Officer C. Knight and Officer C. Moffitt were on routine patrol in the parking lot behind the businesses at 380 Bill Street, checking the parking lot for vehicle prowlers due to recent car burglaries. Officers observed 4 black males sitting in a white 4-door 2012 Chevrolet with the doors open to the vehicle. As Officer C. Knight and Officer C. Moffitt approached the vehicle, officers could smell a very strong odor of raw marijuana coming from inside of the vehicle. Officer C. Moffitt observed 5 marijuana blunts sitting on top of the center console in between the driver, defendant Hernandez Govan, and passenger, defendant Steve Cooper. Officer C. Knight approached the vehicle from the driver's side and observed defendant Hernandez Govan stuffing a clear plastic baggie containing what appeared to be a green leafy substance. Defendant Hernandez Govan was asked to step out of the car for officer safety and conducted a pat-down for weapons, at which time defendant Hernandez Govan advised officers he had a small bag of weed in his left front pocket. Officer C. Knight removed a clear plastic baggie containing what appeared to be marijuana and also contained 9 hydrocodone pills, white in color, labeled Watson 503, which is listed as a Schedule II drug. Officers placed defendant Hernandez Govan into custody. Officers conducted an inventory of the vehicle, and Officer C. Knight located a loaded Smith & Wesson 9mm loaded with 16 rounds and one in the chamber located on the front driver's seat sitting next to the center console where defendant Hernandez Govan was sitting. Defendant Hernandez Govan was convicted of a convicted felon in possession of a handgun on April 4th, 2008, and was sentenced to 1 year in Judge Higgs' court. Defendant Hernandez Govan was arrested and transported to Felony Response Office. Defendant Hernandez Govan was transported to jail. The firearm serial number was checked on Station B, which showed to be taken in an auto burglary report. The 9 hydrocodone pills and marijuana for defendant Hernandez Govan was tagged at property and evidence and tested positive for the THC, weighing 9.12 grams. Now, this case would eventually go fed, and we're going to get to that part. But I wanted to highlight that throughout these other cases that I have named, there's also the gun charge from 2008. I didn't put that in here because I wasn't able to get the paperwork and actually break down what happened. But as you see, this case mentions it. So we got about 3 or 4 drug cases and 2 gun cases between 2003 and 2012. But this would not be the end. Hernandez Govan was arrested again just a few months after this on October 21st of 2012, and he was charged with aggravated assault and reckless endangerment. According to the affidavit, on October 21st, 2012, at 1:30 p.m., Lieutenant P. Morton was on routine patrol southbound Critter Street when he heard several gunshots. Lieutenant Morton then observed the 2 defendants running southbound on Critter and turning back and firing shots at the victim standing on the east side of Critter, with 1 round striking the front door at a residence. The defendants then fled on foot as Lieutenant Morton pursued them. Defendant Hernandez Govan was located at a residence. Defendant Michael Wilson was located behind a shed at another residence. A Tech 9 firearm, Intratec 9mm model AB-10 was located between the chain fence and the wood fence at the residence where defendant Hernandez Govan was found, and tagged at 201 Poplar Property Evidence Room. Victim Cordero Avant advised officers that he was walking south on Critter when he saw the defendants get out of a gold car and start shooting at him and victim Darian Hines. Victim Cordero Avant advised that he thought he was just caught in between the defendants and victim Darian Hines and ran to get away from the shots fired. The owner of the home that was hit is a lady who was born in 1940. I won't say her name, but he was charged with felony assault. The felony assault unit was notified and advised to straight charge the defendants. The defendants are relatives to a victim who was killed on 10/20/2012, and they believed victim Darian Hines to be the person responsible for the death. The defendants were taken into custody and transported to 201 Poplar. Now, this particular situation leaves a lot of questions to be answered. One of which is, how did the police know that Govan and this other guy were shooting at this Darian Mitchell guy because they believed that he killed somebody? Did somebody blurt out at the scene, he killed my people? Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, how did that go? I also want to point out that this is now his 3rd firearms charge. So now we have about 4 or 5 drug-related offenses and 3 weapons charges, 2 of which are active at the same time within months of each other. So as I said earlier, the feds would swoop in and charge him for the April case, the possession of a gun while he had the weed, and he would plead guilty to possession of a firearm while drug trafficking. The crazy part about this is he was only sentenced to 40 months. So think about this: 5 different drug cases, 3 different firearm charges between 2008 and 2012. 2 of those charges in the same year. And he was only sentenced to 40 months in the feds. Now, a lot of people who are familiar with the federal process as far as criminal history points, the point system, and criminal history categories are amazed that he only got 40 months for these. And these are just the major charges that I mentioned to y'all. As y'all see, I left out the '08 gun charge, and he got about 47 different cases on his docket. So a lot of people are amazed that he only got 40 months. And they speculating that he's some type of informant or snitch or something. And that's supported by the fact that if you look at his federal docket, everything is sealed. Everything is sealed. The plea agreement paperwork is sealed. All of the motions, everything is sealed. You can only see the basic stuff. He filed a motion. You can see the order for the motion. You can see setting letters, stuff like that. It lets you see his judgment, but even the judgment is redacted. If you look on the docket, it'll say judgment, and then it'll say redacted judgment. So that's causing a lot of people who are just familiar with the system to say, man, dude is a snitch. He's a confidential informant. There's no reason for that paperwork to be sealed up. That leads me to my next point in the next chapter of this story. A lot of people are supporting their argument that he is a confidential informant with the information that Straight Drop, Justin Johnson's attorney, revealed that Hernandez Govan proffered while this case was going on. So I'm going to explain to y'all the proffer situation, because just like you have guys who think they can go in the interrogation room and talk their way out of crimes or manipulate police officers, you have guys who go into proffer sessions and do the same thing. A proffer session is basically an interrogation, but you have made an agreement with the government prior to going into the session that you will tell them the truth, and that nothing that you say during this proffer session can be used against you. It's called use immunity. So it's not full, complete immunity, but it's saying that none of this information can be used against you. Now, they do have something called derivative use. And what this does is it allows them to take the information that you provide them during your proffer session and use it to further investigate other people and other circumstances surrounding this situation. Whatever information you give them, they can take it and use it to further their investigation. The downside to this is, once again, the proffer session does not give you full immunity. So if some information you provide leads to some other information that incriminates you, then they are able to come back and use that information against you, even though you were granted use immunity. So it's like if Hernandez Govan were to go in his proffer session and say, Big Juke did it, Straight Drop did it, Cornelius Smith did it, and I know about it because, I was around when they were talking to each other. I didn't know exactly what was going on, but it came to me afterwards. Then they would be able to go and pick these guys up based on the information. If they turned around and gave information like Cornelius Smith did, then that information would be eligible for use against Hernandez Govan under the derivative use clause. So if Hernandez Govan said Cornelius Smith stole the car in his proffer session, they wouldn't be able to come in and say, we know Hernandez Govan is guilty because he knew that Cornelius Smith stole the car. That's indicative of him being complicit in this crime. However, if they go pick up Cornelius Smith and Cornelius Smith says, yeah, I went over there and stole the car, but Hernandez Govan told me where to go to get the car. He told me the reason that he needed the car, and he told me that he would pay me to go get the car. Then they can use that information against Hernandez Govan. So what I believe happened in this situation is that once these guys started getting rounded up, it turned into a free-for-all. Every man for themselves. Everybody started pointing fingers, telling on each other, blaming other people. Straight Drop and Cornelius were cooked from the beginning, from the second the police found out they were involved. Cornelius identified himself as a shooter, and Straight Drop basically paper trailed itself wearing the same clothes, going to different places, being seen in the same outfit that he did the drill in. So while Cornelius did testify against Straight Drop, there was a lot of other evidence to corroborate that Straight Drop was involved in this. On the flip side of that, you have Hernandez Govan. All they have are some phone calls, some text messages, and it really comes down to the word of Cornelius Smith as to whether Hernandez Govan was directly involved in the planning and plotting of the murder, or at least setting it up. That's a credibility issue. And when you put in front of the jury that Hernandez Govan proffered in this situation, meaning he talked to the police, now that creates a motive for Cornelius Smith to point the finger at Hernandez Govan. You know, like, okay, I'm an actual shooter, but I need somebody to blame so I can get off in this situation. Who better to blame than the guy that's went into a proffer session and blamed me? Now, people gonna say, how do you know he went in a proffer session and talked? All you have to do is listen to his attorney's argument. Anything that goes on the record during trial is pretty much the story. It's called a pleading, you know, a motion. Any of that stuff is called a pleading. So what you put on record, that's stated as a fact. Hernandez Govan's attorney went into the trial room and said, hey, my client didn't do anything. All he did was hook Big Jook up with these two guys. Once he hooked them up, Big Jook did all of the talking. Along with other things that incriminated Big Jook and basically pointed the finger at him and those guys. The reason I know that that's what was said during the proffer session is because he would not have been allowed to argue that if that was not what was said. The prosecution would have immediately popped up with the proffer session and said, hey, you trying to argue that your client wasn't even there when none of this took place. But in the proffer session, he said that he hooked Big Jook up with these guys. So the storyline that he's telling during trial is the version of events that Hernandez Govan provided during his proffer session. Now, I know some of y'all gonna ask, if he took a proffer session and he was a witness against these guys, why didn't the prosecution call him as a witness during Straight Drop's trial? Had they called him as a witness during the trial, they would have had to give him a deal. I don't believe that the prosecution believed his story for a second. I don't believe that they believed the information that was in his proffer session, but they had no way to prove that he was lying. So they agreed to the proffer session and gave him the use immunity just to get him to tell a story. That's my theory on that. They wanted a statement from him. They needed a statement from him, and they gave him immunity, use immunity. Basically, whatever you say cannot be used against you by us. But we can go to Cornelius Smith and tell him that you said this about him, and he can give us information that we can use against you. So I really feel like the state, they were really trying to convict this guy. They were trying to crush him. They tried to put him in a trick bag. And that's obvious from the fact that he was still taken to trial even after he proffered. Usually when guys go in here and proffer, you know, they'll drop the charges, or, you know, they'll offer them some type of plea deal or plea negotiation. He wasn't given that option. And that's usually how it goes for people that the government doesn't believe, or people who go into the proffer session and try to finesse the feds. You know, if you go in there and give them like some half answers, half truths, or they can see that you giving them a runaround just to try to see how much they know, then they ain't giving you no deal. They gonna take you to trial and they gonna try to put the hammer on you, even though they cannot prove that you are lying. Y'all got to keep that in mind. It was basically Cornelius's word against Govan's word. He admitted to the phone calls. He admitted to being there and all of that stuff, but he denied any involvement in the planning of the murder. They had no solid evidence against him aside from this other guy's testimony. And I think that Straight Drop's attorney made a mistake by putting the info in front of the jury that this guy proffered. I know what he was trying to do, basically trying to say, hey, this guy proffered, you know, he's getting immunity from them, so he's going to go in here and say all of this stuff. But what he did was allow the jury to see that Hernandez Govan was cooperating in this case. So now you got this jury looking at this guy who's admitted that he's the shooter on the stand, incriminating somebody else. And the person that he's incriminating has already been identified as a cooperator, at least in the jury's eyes. We understand, people who have knowledge of the law understand that a professation doesn't necessarily mean that you snitched. But the jury, on the other hand, is looking at it like, okay, this guy went and gave them some information. I doubt that he would have done so if he was actually involved. I know it's crazy. Some people do that and they really be involved, but I believe that's how he was found not guilty, because the jury was under the impression that this guy told on these guys and now they trying to tell back on him in order to, you know, get out of the situation. Or, you know, they tried to throw somebody under the bus just to get out of the situation, which led to him proffering against them. Straight Drop, I don't believe, made a statement. I could be wrong about that. I ain't gonna lie, I didn't really follow his trial that heavy. And I'm more of a paperwork type of guy. I don't like to sit there and watch 7 hours of video. You know, I don't got that much time in my day, to be honest. But I will read the paperwork, and I'm pretty good at that, I believe. So this is the conclusion that I reached. Is Hernandez Govan a confidential informant? The paperwork is sealed, so I can't say that for certain. But I can say that sealed paperwork is not a good sign. Anytime you got 3 or 4 gun cases, 3 or 4 or 5 drug cases, and then you get a gun protecting the drugs case, there's no reason for your paperwork to be sealed. And to get 40 months on top of that is crazy. But I didn't see, you know, the federal confidential informant paperwork. Do I believe he snitched in this case? Of course. I believe he snitched on both of the shooters and Big Jook, because Big Jook is dead now. But I believe he snitched before Big Jook died. There's just the issue of whether or not the police believed that Big Jook was actually involved. And that's why his attorney made a great point in establishing that Big Jook was never questioned, because that destroyed the credibility of Cornelius Smith. It's like, okay, if y'all believe Cornelius Smith, then y'all believe that Hernandez Govan plotted this out with Big Jook. Why did y'all charge Hernandez Govan and never even go talk to Big Jook? That's a really, really good point. That's a really good question. And the jury, obviously, they looking at that like, wow, that doesn't make sense. If you believe part of the story, then why didn't you just at least investigate the other part of the story? So now you got them looking at this guy like, well, maybe he really wasn't involved, because if the police believe that, they would have talked to that other guy. And then these attorneys come in here and point out that he proffered against these guys, which gives the jury more reason to believe that they may be trying to throw this guy under the bus just to save their own skin. So that's how I think that he got off. You know, that's my thing. You know, I believe that the state was really trying to convict him. Like I said, they just didn't have much to work with. He outsmarted them to a degree, because, you know, he didn't do nothing. He didn't shoot nobody. All y'all got is some call logs with no proof of what was said during those calls. So if they had wiretaps, he might have been cooked. But just my word against this other guy who's a killer, who does drugs and all of this other stuff, I would have took it to trial too. At the end of the day, the case is done. I don't feel like it's fair to young Dolph's family for people to keep getting on here and, oh, they need to get street justice. They attempted to get the type of justice that they tried to get. And he was found not guilty, man. You got to leave it alone and move forward in life. Some people may feel a certain way, but a large amount of people who were just rooting for this guy to get convicted and who were pointing out evidence that basically made him look guilty are now amongst the people saying that Dolph's people should get street justice. So y'all went from wanting somebody to go to jail for committing a crime to now saying that somebody else should go commit a crime. And like I said, this is where the lines get blurred when it comes to justice, when it comes to being a civilian or being a street veteran. You have guys who have literally been on here advocating for this man to go to jail, now advocating for him to be killed in the street, which is a direct contradiction. And like I said, I don't think it's fair to Dolph's family. They need to be given an opportunity to rest. They done been through a couple of trials. They got a not guilty verdict in one of the situations. They may be unhappy with the verdict themselves. And now, instead of being able to just sit back and take everything in, they got everybody on the internet. Oh, they need to go kill somebody. They need to do this. They need to do that. Perpetuating the same cycle that they just wished prison on these guys for in the young Dolph situation. And a lot of people, you got to think about this. Okay, if these guys go get revenge for Dolph or whatever you want to call it, then who is going to come get revenge for the person that they did something to? And the cycle goes on and on. So now you taking Dolph's people from, advocating for justice to being out here in the streets committing crimes. And I get it. Some people like, well, if the police won't do their job, then, but they did. They arrested him. They charged him. He went to trial. He was found not guilty. Of course, being found not guilty doesn't mean you innocent. I know people that were guilty and won that trial. Everybody does. At least almost everybody does. But that doesn't take away the fact that the justice system said he was not guilty, bro. So we got to, at some point, leave it where it is and, allow those families to rest and deal with this situation how they want to deal with it. I just brought y'all this video because I felt like it was informative, not just with the legal aspects, but also as far as the paperwork and the little backstory on who Hernandez Govan actually is. A lot of people been painting him out to be like this demon. And even in the young Dolph, in the Vlad TV interview, he said, yeah, we was just young. We was selling little petty weed, stuff like that. If you look at all of his charges, the man literally getting caught with petty weed. He ain't been caught with 2 ounces of weed yet. 40 grams, 3 grams, all of this little different. The laws in Tennessee is crazy, by the way. If you down there in Tennessee living, be careful. Because they ain't, controlled substance case for weed. But yeah, that's pretty much all he got. Petty weed cases. He got some gun cases. He got a aggravated assault for shooting. He was running away shooting, which looks even more crazy. You running from the direction of the person that you shooting at when you should be going towards them. But that's another thing. I ain't going to dwell on that. Yeah. The justice system, man, I can't say they failed. I can say that they tried. And, it just went his way. I believe strongly that his proffer session influenced the jury to believe that he was innocent. Because they thinking, man, okay, what more do you want from an innocent man? He comes in here, he professes his innocence, he proclaims his innocence, and he stands on it. He gets all the way to trial. He done told y'all everything that he know about the situation. His lawyer is up here pointing out everything that he told y'all that shows that somebody else put this money up. Somebody else approached these guys about doing this hit for them. Somebody else told him that they wanted him to put him in touch with some people. So unless they had Big Jook to prove that, you know, Hernandez Govan actually played a role, a serious role, and a knowing role, because unknowingly hooking people up don't make you guilty, then they kind of at a dead end with him. On the other side of that, they do have a case against Big Jook now. So just like I said with that derivative use, now they can take all of the information that was gained from the proffer session with Big Jook and the information that his lawyer put on record at the trial, and they can go attempt to build another case. I wouldn't be surprised if the feds come back and give him some type of drug conspiracy charge or something along those lines, because there was a lot of talk about doing and selling drugs. And of course, you know, he gets his use immunity from his proffer session, but there is still the issue of the derivative use. Now you go and tell this information, and now these guys get on here and say, no, this is what happened. And maybe the feds learned something during this trial that they didn't already know. I ain't wishing it on them. I'm just saying this is how it goes. You know, the case is not over with. It's not done. He running around doing interviews. He probably should be keeping quiet for a little while. But
Hey, yo, you know what I look at and what's my view on this now? It's crazy because everything Byron Blake said, especially at the end of this video, was the truth. Like, he should be relaxing, chilling, falling back from all this, but instead, he on the internet running his mouth, threatening people. Now, to each is his own. He a grown man. He could do what he want to do, but he don't think that's going to come back to bite him in the ass. He don't think that people are going to start looking at him different. He don't think that these interviews that he did, yo, his story probably changed up from what he told the court. So at the end of the day, he better not let this shit go over his head. Yo, he getting watched and analyzed on all levels. So if he continue conducting business the way that he conducting it, it's over. Like, don't get me wrong, he don't even gotta do no more interviews because Son has his own page right now. He made his own page and his views going up. So at the end of the day, hey, it is what it is. You can't stop Son from having a platform, like I said in my previous videos, which y'all should go check out. And then make sure y'all go check out the Surviving Drake, the Quentin Miller story. That's up right now. You know what I'm saying? But like I said in my previous videos, that Son gonna mess around and he gonna get his page shut down because ain't nobody interviewing him no more. After he did his little first two interviews or whatever the case may be, it's a wrap for him. So now what you gonna do? You gotta get on the net and you gotta stir up beef, all that, everything. Cause why? Controversy sells. You know what I'm saying? Like, that sells most definitely. So, you know, at the end of the day, hey, it is what it is. Yo, remember, we ain't asking for no money, y'all. The only thing we ask for y'all to do is hit the button. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel so we could get up in the algorithm and we could continue doing what we doing to bring y'all these videos and bring in awareness to certain situations. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I tell them to get where to get lost. It's only right. That's a fact of window. But this situation right here is crazy. This is a next level how his criminal history tells a whole different story. Don't let that shit go over your head. I want y'all to jump in the comments, drop it in the comments, and let me know what y'all think on this. You know what I'm saying? You know, shout outs to the whole Memphis. You know what I'm saying? R.I.P. the young dog. My condolences go out to this whole family and the whole PRE clique. Most definitely. You know what I'm saying? Like, but y'all let me know. Y'all jump in the comments and let me know how y'all feel, what y'all thoughts on this. And do y'all really think that he's an informant, like everybody is saying, like it's looking kind of crazy right now. And even if he is really at this point, I don't think nobody even really care. You know what I'm saying? Like at the end of the day, but hey yo, we out of here until next video. I'll catch y'all next video. Remember, stay 10 toes down. Most definitely. And when you come over here, bring your best boots because we be going on the craziest hikes out here. You heard? So, hey yo, I catch y'all and I'm out of here. One.